I think it's time to introduce the speaker. Maybe the participant can start the introduction part.
Challenges in the research.
Whose turn it is today?
Yes, sir, Kavita.
Yes, ma'am. Please proceed.
Okay. Good afternoon, Ananta. I am Dr. G. Kavita, working as an assistant professor of economics in HT Hindu College in Nagarkoil. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome our resource person, Dr. Y. Srinivasa Rao, in this nice occasion. He working as an associate professor, Department of History, Bharadasan University, Tiruchirappalli. He has 10 years of teaching and research experience. His area of research is history of science and technology, modern India, national movement, subaltern technologies. He is serving as coordinator of online courses, coordinator of environmental club, XG committee member, Green and Clean Initiative, NAT coordinator, placement cell coordinator, coordinator of external activities, coordinator of examinations. He produced 36 MPhil scholars and he published 6 national and international journals, 14 articles published in newspapers and magazines. He completed one major project and 76 special lectures delivered. Welcome you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Mohan, should I start? Okay, so hello everybody. I thank Kavita for introducing me with this short and very sweet. Let me start by giving sort of a warning to the entire human civilization. Not for us, those who are sitting here, or this warning has to be carried out to our friends and those who are part of the environmental studies, or those who are not part of the environmental studies, or the environmental consciousness as an important element of the present day civilization. So this warning has to be taken seriously. Then only you'll have a foreseeable future, or otherwise we are going to have a tough time. If not we, because most of us in the middle age, probably our children or their children will have a tough time living in this planet. Now, this is not me saying, it is Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking, you know that he is one of the greatest physicists, crippled to a wheelchair by a dangerous disease. But he is a person who never believed in God. And towards the end also he said, if I have the ability to understand, if the science helps me to understand everything exists in this universe, I will not be needing the God. He is such a person. So he is a person who has said that humans have only 100 years left on this planet. So this is a warning, not me giving, it is the Stephen Hawking. So the man of such kind, certainly the warning has certain amount of value, I believe. Then the growth mania is a fatal disease of the human civilization. This is said by Paul Ehrlich from Stanford University, a man who worked on a book called Population Bomb. Now, when you take these two things together, certainly we come to a conclusion that we are not living in a situation where we believe that things are as usual, or business is as usual, or the environment is as usual. The resources on this planet are abundant forever. We can use, in fact, the utilitarian philosophy of the human civilization, especially given by Francis Bacon, it makes us believe that the efficient usage of the nature is the best capacity of the human, or the bestest ability of the human. The finest ability of the human is the efficient usage of the nature. But the efficient usage of the nature is actually lacking the very prime character. That means that the efficiency is, synonymously believed to be used as some an uncontrolled usage of the nature. The efficient usage of the nature is synonymous with uncontrolled usage of the nature. That's where the problem lies. So before we go into the details of the environmental movements and the role played by the NGOs and so on, let us ask some questions to ourselves and try to answer them in course of this lecture. Why the question of protecting the environment emerged in the first place? Why are we asking this question? Why are we having an education, compulsory education across the disciplines to all students and faculty members? Why prior to 1960, there were no such kind of disciplines like environmental studies, women's studies, science and technology studies, and so on and so forth. So why are we having such kind of a specialized disciplines at this point in time? What made us to think about the environment and our relationship with the environment, and re-establishing the last harmonious the relationship between the humans and nature? So what was the situation that made us to feel such a way that we need to talk about environment, care about environment, protect it, revive it, promote it, and extend it to the future? So what is that? So what is the concept of crisis of civilization? Why C.P. Snow is very vigorously talking about in his Two Cultures book back in 1960. So what is the crisis of civilization that we're facing at this point in time? How do we address it? Crisis of civilization is combination, for my understanding, combination of three important aspects. One is depleted resources, pollution, and global warming. These three are crisis of human civilization. According to C.P. Snow, this crisis of civilization was created by the so-called human intelligence, or the efficient usage of the nature, encouraged by the theory of utilitarian theory of using the nature, or utilitarian theory of philosophy of using the nature. This efficient usage of the nature has led to the crisis where we are living. We are not able to repair these three damages caused by us. That's depletion of resources, pollution, and global warming. So none of this seems to be solvable at this point of time. Only mitigate. You can mitigate, lessen, so you develop certain sort of strategies to lessen the burden or lessen the damage, sort of things that we are doing. But certainly all of us know that the damage that is done for the last 2.5 centuries is actually irreparable. That all of us we know. So probably we are waiting for the extension of our own.
Sorry for the disturbance. Sir, do you have PPT view?
No, I don't have PPT.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Sorry, sir.
Yeah. So probably we are waiting for our own extension. If not in our time, probably our grandchildren or grandchildren time, they will be waiting for the extension of the human race also. Why we are so special when the rest of the biological species are extension is happening right now for them? What is so special about us? Given that our capacity to survive, we might extend our future, human race's future, for say a few hundred years. That's it. If at all the Stephen Hawking proved to be wrong, he was saying something. How come we believe that only 100 years are left for the humans? Now, if at all say we made all efforts after the warning, we heeded to the warning of Stephen Hawking, we make all efforts to extend our future by lessening the damage that we are causing to the environment. So we extend the future by say few hundred years, but we are not going to stop the damage, or we are not going to totally repair the damage that we caused. So what he was saying, Stephen Hawking saying, was that he was not saying that the planet is going to die in 100 years. He was saying that the planet is going to become unlivable for the biological species. So that's the point. if that is the point, so what are we, actually getting from that kind of a warning? How actually we have reformed our lives to suit to the a model of life that is actually demanded by the present day nature, that would continuously lessen the burden on it. So we are actually terribly failing in reforming our life, reshaping our life, model of life, the method of life. So that is not able, and that is not actually happening now. That's an important issue that we need to talk about. So refashioning of the life that would result in lessening the burden on the planet is actually not happening. So therefore, the crisis of the civilization, these three damages that we caused through the efficient usage of the nature for last two and a half centuries. Actually, we are for the last two centuries, that is from 1750 to 1950, the human civilization of that point in time had a great time, quote unquote. But from 1950s, we are having a tough time. Is it not? Tough time in the sense that nobody drinks a water which is not filtered. We have reached a stage where we are hypocritically not recognizing the fact that today we do not have a situation where we do not have a confidence on the water. The publicly, openly available water is, directly is drinkable. So which means now another 20 to 50 years, we have to come to a conclusion that accept the reality was that the unfiltered, air cannot be breathed from now on. So another 50 years, that's it. So unfiltered air, unfiltered water we are drinking today, unfiltered air in course of time will become an essential thing. So this is the reality. Yet, though the Delhi is being called as a gas chamber, but we still feel that the things are as usual. So the crisis of civilization is a biggest warning for us. Three problems that we are facing today. That is the depletion of resources, the pollution, and the global warming. So this we need to keep in mind when we connect the NGOs work to the larger question of protection of the nature, and as well as the activist work to the question of protection of the nature. Neoliberalism, to the question of exploitation or usage of the nature, government as an agency of creating the greater good. That is also need to be brought to the discussion. So after realizing by 1950, what is the level of consciousness, degree of consciousness that we are having on environment? What is the impact of the environmental studies? As a student of history, as a student of economics, as a student of environmental science, to what extent the environmental consciousness at first as an individual in you has brought a dramatic change in refashioning the life, so that you are presenting yourself as an example to a next person or a bunch of students that look, at this moment in time, after realizing and everything is as an evidence existing in front of your eyes, to what extent you will be refashioning our lives to provide a path for the posterity, future generations. There is one small young guy in Tanjavur few years ago. You must be knowing his name, Nehru. His name is Jawahar Nehru or something. This boy fought, single-handedly fought against the Tanjavur municipality, trying to lessen the plastic in the corporation. But he failed. He believed that he failed in all his efforts in trying to convince the corporation. He committed suicide. So that actually, in that single individual, if you take for consideration and discuss, we believe that, look, that person is a sort of is gone out of line, and then he he thought entire burden is in his shoulders, and then he took the decision on his own. So nobody is responsible for what he did. But then I don't see a farmer is dying because he's being denied of his rights, committing suicide, and this boy is died because human society is not actually realizing what they're supposed to realize, what it's supposed to realize the danger. So therefore, both are same for me. But we see this person as some sort of a mentally deranged person, a person who do not thought actually wrong things, and he committed suicide. So he has to take the responsibility on his own. One person actually out of the environmental concern or a concern on the environment, his town committed suicide. We don't see it as a serious problem. That is the serious problem for my understanding. If you don't see it as a serious problem, like a farmer committing suicide, is farming is in serious crisis. So therefore, a boy committed suicide out of environmental concern, we also has to see that as a serious problem. The environmental concern is also a serious problem. We cannot consider him as a mentally deranged person. But that is what actually, so which means at this point in time, if you are thinking like that about this boy in Tanjavur, certainly we have not realized enough that what is the danger that we are going to face, if not us, but especially the future generations. Greta Thunberg very frequently saying what right you have to rob my future. Isn't it? So she is in her 20s. So saying, so therefore, if anybody has to talk about the dangers that is caused to the nature or the damage that is caused to the nature, not us, let the children talk about it, because will be very happy in another 50 years. So it is only the responsibility of the children who should be talking about the environment. So that is the kind of level of consciousness among us, despite going through the education on the environmental studies on environment. We are having education. In fact, the governments across the world have made it compulsory that all people should have some amount of education on the environment and its equation. So despite, another question that we would like to ask is, despite having a general impact on the nature, there is a climate change, environment is degraded, yet the environmental consciousness is not same among all sections of the society. Why it is not same among all sections of society? Why there is a variation in the consciousness? Why there has to be? Should there be a variation in the consciousness among the sections of the society, in different sections, class, caste, or whatever? Why should there be a variation when the impact would be same on all sections of the society? Why there is a variation? Variation is very visible. The degree of consciousness among the sections of the society throughout the world is not the same. So the degree of consciousness on the environmental degradation, climate change, according to the people in the government today, they believe that there was a serious environmental catastrophe at Himalayas in the Chamoli district in the recent times, last or before month, because the hills are sneezing. It's not the climate change, or it is not the damage that is caused by the degraded environment. People would like to make us believe that the hills are sneezing, they are coughing. That's why there was certain amount of snow actually resulted in avalanche. So therefore, you need not have to worry. So we are in. So if that is a case of a level of consciousness in the people who are running the government, how is it not a clear-cut evidence that we have a degree of variation in the environmental consciousness? So the hills are sneezing. It is not a problem that is from 1960s, the Chamoli region in Jharkhand has been sort of subjected to an uncontrolled exploitation. So therefore, what has happened in the recent times in Jharkhand, all the hydroelectric projects were taken away by the water, the flooded water. So that problem, if you don't understand that there is a connection between the climate change and the environmental degraded environment in that area, that the certain sort of a narrative, certain sort of a belief that is being actually perpetuated among the people, saying that you need not have to worry, just hills are sneezing, that is the only problem, so you need not have to worry. So environment is not changing, environment is not degraded, climate is not changing, we are only changing. So if there is a problem, that is the only problem, that problem is only the hills were sneezing. So such is a kind of a attitude we have, which if there is certain section of people who are buying that sort of a belief, buying that sort of a narrative, yeah, what people are saying, what people in the government are saying is true, that actually environment is not dramatically changing. It's only here and there we are changing. That's why we are having cough and cold for a long time. It's not nothing to do with the, or if we are having the severe cyclones, which are not less than 100 kilometers per hour. That severity in the cyclones is nothing to do with the environmental changes or global warming. It's quite natural. So this sort of a narrative is actually perpetuated by the people in the establishment, so that it has certain amount of politics. I'm not going into that at this moment in time. So the level of consciousness supposed to be same across the sections on the degradation of the environment and as well as the climate change. It cannot be varied sort of a consciousness. If it is varied consciousness, we are being governed by the objectives, agendas, and the very concept of environment. So that, or if that consciousness varies among them, like the very basic idea that something seriously damaged here, if you don't agree to that, what is happening is that, look, I still have a future. My future depends upon the extensive exploitation of the nature. So therefore, don't control me. If that is a narrative, one would still wanted to believe, and that he or she wanted us to be believed as a prime narrative of this nation. Then behind such a narrative, there is a politics. That politics we need to understand. So if there is a degree of variation among the people in the amount of degree of consciousness, degree of variation in the degree of consciousness, certainly that degree of consciousness is actually governed by the intentions. It could be economic, it could be political, it could be social. It is the intentions of the people who are in the helm of the affairs, or communities which still believe that it is their right to use the nature for building the brighter future. Even to say that openly at this moment in time, we do not believe that it is fair. But there are people who believe that, look, you cannot control me from using the nature, because nature is to be used. That's a basic idea of the human civilization. So how can you put control on that? So therefore, the degree of variation in the environmental consciousness is actually political. It is not natural. So the politicality of the degree of variation is actually coming from the ability of perpetuating the narratives. These narratives are perpetuated by the powerful social groups. Now the weak cannot claim the right to the nature. We all know that. Weak is not able to claim the ownership over the nature. Forget about the ownership, they are not able to let live. They are not being able to let live. So therefore, weaker sections, subaltern sections, do not have the right to claim the ownership over the nature, at least rights over the nature, at least live in the patch of nature where they have been living for generations together. So this is one side of the story. The other side of the story is that the ability to perpetuate the story of extensive uses of the nature and make the world believe that there is nothing wrong in that story. If I'm developing a story that to allow me to exploit the nature, and I am capable of making the people that there is nothing wrong in that story, that is where I am successful. So there are powerful social groups still who believes that they still have the right to manipulate or to develop stories and actually involve in extensively exploit the nature. It's not just developing the stuff. This manipulation of the stories, building the stories in and around the work they do, exploitative the work they do, and they justify it in course of time by taking the help of supportive agencies. They will be very successfully developing the stories, narratives, and eliminate any sort of criminality if involved in that story. At this point in time, any sort of a justification for extensive exploitation of the nature would need to be put for the human scrutiny. But when narratives comes for human scrutiny, people taking the supportive agencies help, like media, for example, and they were very closely working together and trying to eliminate the element of criminality in the narrative. So therefore, after all, they are doing for the greater good of the nation. They are doing for the development of the nation. How do you worry about environment? If you want to worry about the environment, you would not have development. So the supportive agencies would come in hand to support the agencies of extensive exploitation of the nature. So based on that, environmental consciousness is unfair. Environmental degree of variation among the sections of society, various sections of the society, is actually unfair, unethical, and immoral. It has to be common across the sections of the society. For my understanding, human society in India or elsewhere, in terms of environment, is divided into irresponsible consumers of nature, protectors of nature, and sufferers of destruction of the nature. These are the three broad categories you can see. Irresponsible consumers of the nature, protectors of the nature, and sufferers of the destruction of the nature. So when you look at these three categories, you can easily place people into these three boxes. Irresponsible consumers of the nature. Those people are especially the captains of capitalism. State as quote unquote producer of the greater good. These two can be placed, and of course, most of the upper middle class rich who do not find any problem with the narratives of neoliberalism and the state as an eminent domain would not worry, because for the upper middle class, I am not talking all. When I say upper middle class who are rich, I am not talking all upper middle class, all rich. And that will be wrong statement to make, because most of the environmental activists have been seriously working at the cost of their life are also, some of them are from rich, some of them are from upper middle class. So therefore, I would not make the mistake of arguing that all rich or all upper middle class people can be placed into the first category of irresponsible consumers of nature. I'm not doing that. So the irresponsible consumers of the nature self-declare. In fact, they naturalize their right, quote unquote. They naturalize, they normalize the right that is forcefully absorbed by being a socially powerful group, or by being manipulative enough, powerful enough to normalize a right which is not normal, by using the supportive agencies, by using the supportive political environment, by naturally and unnaturally, normally, abnormally acquiring the ability of manipulation. The socially powerful groups try to normalize the abnormal usage of the nature. The abnormality of using the nature, the element of criminality of using the nature is very cleverly eliminated, as I told you earlier, by developing the positive narratives on the destructive endeavors. Positive narratives on the destructive endeavors. They very cleverly eliminated the criminality, guilt, immorality inbuilt in the very actions of destructive endeavors. So the irresponsible consumers of the nature, quote unquote, who have been responsible for the crisis of civilization, that the three problems that I talked about. At this point in time, while the entire society is not in the same sort of a thought process. If that is the case, we will not be talking about environmental crisis today, environmental protection today. If we are talking about environmental protection today, all are not in the category called irresponsible consumers of the nature. So therefore, there is a huge amount of realization among the human civilization. Look, things are not as usual as it was in pre-1750. We have presented ourselves a situation where we are not able to repair it. Therefore, we cannot feel easy about what we are seeing today. The evidence of destruction is everywhere. So therefore, we cannot feel at ease saying that nothing has happened, things are as usual. So, though all sections of the society not in the category of irresponsible users of the nature, but the consciousness has not actually gone into the category which has been irresponsible for 2 centuries, and it wanted to be responsible even till today, or it will be so in future also. That's the problem that we need to talk about. Where the human consciousness, where the environmental consciousness is much more higher, supposed to be much more higher, that category is still wanted to remain as irresponsible consumer of the nature. Its main argument is that If I don't consume the nature, human progress would not happen. That is its main argument. But then if that is the case, if you have to believe in that, Stephen Hawking should be wrong. Paul Ehrlich should be wrong. Growth mania is a fatal disease of human civilization. That's what Paul Ehrlich said. If these arguments by the irresponsible consumers or efficient consumers, these people can also be called as efficient consumers. The efficient consumers of the nature, quote unquote, because that's not what I mean. They are not efficient. They are exploiters of the nature. So this category is still not realizing the efforts made. They make the efforts even till today to manipulate the pro-environmental narratives or criminalize the pro-environmental narratives, so that their efforts of, again, efficient users of the nature cannot be blocked or arrested. They invest on criminalizing the pro or friendly ecological narratives, ecological stories, ecological endeavors by the individuals, by the association, by the organizations, by the NGOs, by the intellectuals, by the voluntary student communities. All these efforts would be criminalized with the given power, manipulative power they can acquire from various powerful agencies in the world. So the problem here is that if you are looking at a situation where you are getting tired of, in 2019 January, government has brought at least a single plastic carrier bag, ban on the single plastic carrier bags. But you look at the response to that kind of a legislation from the Tamil Nadu civil society is not at all appreciable. There will be some sections of the society, some serious people who've been making some efforts, some writing some articles, or at individual level they refashion the life that they will be able to avoid the plastic and all that. But overall response of the Tamil civil society, when I look at, I am so depressed and disappointed that the entire Tamil society believes that things are as usual. What you saw after the ban is the pro-plastic narratives and stories and arguments, the anti-plastic arguments are very few. That itself explains that where the general society is in terms of degree of consciousness. Now let us come to another sort of an understanding. Is that lesser degree of consciousness in entire Tamil Nadu civil society is to be blamed on the civil society itself, or we have to blame it on a culture that has been long been actually made to exist among the people, that you made it find difficult for the people to get away from a culture. For many people, going away from the plastic is found to be difficult than avoiding many things in life. So a sort of comfort that is cultivated by the neoliberalism among the civil society. I'm not talking about, I talked about the Tamil civil society because there was a ban in 2019 January. But entire Indian civil society, that response would be same. As if it got arrested in a culture that is not able to come out. As if it is somebody, it is being forced by somebody, look, you cannot do that. You are very comfortable with, freely hanging a plastic bag to your hands. Even if you are buying a single tube of toothpaste, you should carry a bag that you are carrying in your hand. So that is a culture, actually, a culture of comfort. the culture of comfort is actually allows the human to habituate to a comfort. And when you have an alternative presented, you feel that going back to an alternative is very difficult than sticking to the comfort. So the irresponsible users of the nature that I'm referring to, capitalism, would want you to be very comfortable by giving you many things, because it's supposed to produce the things. If you don't use the you use the produced things, how it can produce? So the a sort of an understanding or belief that water packet or bottled water, packed water, canned water. Now we are going to have a canned air also, or filtered air. All this concept of something that is naturally available is dangerous to the human. Into this kind of a belief you are brought into. You should not be shackled by the traditions. But I am not talking about the traditions of those things which keep the human mentality as slave. I am not talking about that tradition. A tradition that is actually eco-friendly was actually gone. A disconnection between the eco-friendly culture is brought in. When you disconnect the human from the ecology, you have a lot of products coming. Distancing ourselves from the nature is better than living within the nature. This sort of a narrative. When such kind of narratives are perpetuated by the capitalism, you are provided with certain amount of comfort through various kind of like plastic or whatever, or you are made to believe, you are mentally designed to believe, or mentally prepared to believe, mentally trained to believe that water, if today at this point in time or 20 years ago, a drinkable water is only a safe water. What is happening is that the irresponsible consumers of the nature are developing the strategies for providing permanency to its existence. One or the other way. It provides permanency for its existence. Whenever it finds human society is showing the signs of rejection, its strategies are rejected, its products are rejected. Whenever the capitalism, whenever the state has a dominant domain, you saw the signs people are rejecting, then immediately they will develop the strategies of reimposing the narratives, reconvincing. They invest heavily on the reconvincing, reimposing. Because these two agencies are powerful enough to invest on convincing the society. They have enough resources to invest on convincing the society. More than an individual organizations. Organizations, in fact, lack resources. If we're talking about NGOs, NGOs has to depend upon the permission or license given by the government. If government believes that, like, by nature you are acting against the will and wish of the capitalism and state as a dominant domain, certainly your license is cancelled. Greenpeace is an example. So therefore, for the perpetuation of its narratives, capitalism and the state would invest huge amount of money, that is public money, against the public. They use public money to convince the public, but that investment of convincing is again money that is collected from the public. You can understand how clever they are. So the protectors of the nature are various kinds. From the tribals have been less exposed to the very so-called beautiful idea called development. To those who do not care about life, if they believe in something, protection of the environment, they would do. Even if they go for jail, they go for hunger strike, fasting unto death for 21 days like Medha Patkar. They would not worry. You have individuals, associations, organizations, communities, protectors of the nature. The finest characters of the protectors of the nature is that they do not have the agenda. Their agendas are not harmful to anyone. Their agenda is of self-survival, mostly, if you wanted to say, like, without agenda, how can anybody work? So let us say they have an agenda, but that agenda is for self-survival, fighting for a decent life existence, fighting for what they believe naturally theirs. They do have a right to live. This is the category of the protectors of the nature. These protectors of the nature need not have to, it across the classes and castes and gender, from the mainlanders, from the forest dwellers, this category. The only first category will have the less, it's compositeness. When you look at the first category is compositeness, it mainly comes from the landowning society, capitalist society, society from the socially upper strata. These people only will form part of the first category, the irresponsible consumers of the nature. The sufferers of the nature, the third group, when you look at, is very tricky group. Tricky in a sense that one cannot argue that markedly this is the suffering group. You cannot terra mark a group and say this is a suffering group. It varies according to the kind of damage that is done, kind of natural disaster one faces. But however, primarily at least 70% of the group which suffers due to environmental degradation, pollution, global warming, and natural disasters are 100% of suffering. If you go by percentage of suffering, go by percent of the people, 70%. Go by amount of suffering, 100% suffering. These unfortunately from the lower sections of the society, unfortunate sections of the society, lower classes, lower castes, rural poor, tribal communities, coastal communities. This is the group that forms as the sufferers. The sufferers and the protectors of the nature will have a natural alliance. Will have a natural alliance. In fact, when you look at the movements, national and environment movements in India, these groups work together, assist together, work in tandem. The sufferers, talking about environmental movements by the NGOs, environmental movements by the progressive intellectuals. These people would give voice to the people who are not able to make the arguments that are wanted by the government to point out that we are the sufferers in this way. How are you suffering? You tell me. You can explain your suffering in the words, but that is not enough. You need to be analytical. You need to be you should have the capacity of documenting your suffering, agony, pain. If you fail to document your suffering, you will not be able to make the argument to the government, so the government would listen to you, understand your suffering, and then come for your help. Given a situation, the sufferers need voice. It does not mean that all the sufferers do not have the voice. The nature of the sufferers has dramatically changed. If you look at the civil society of India today, it is not the civil society that was existing in 1950s. Civil society dramatically changed when you have the explosion of information. Extension of the education to many sections of the society. In 1950, that was not the case. So therefore, changing nature of the civil society, especially society that is suffering, its voice is much more higher, much more audible today compared to that of 1950s. It is not easy to kill the voice of the civil society today as it was done in 1950s. Reasons, as I told you, that expansion of the education over 75 years, and the sufferers and those who did not, people who are excluded from the education, are the ones who would have the stories to tell. Their stories were not told earlier. Now they have their own way, a style and method, a means of telling the stories in different ways. So therefore, the changing nature of the civil society has made it difficult for the controllers of the narratives, the government or corporations. Controllers of the narratives, the controllers of the voice, finding it difficult to kill the voice because it is not easy. There are many platforms to voice your voice. Of course, NGOs have one such kind of a channel. It's been one such kind of a channel from Chipko Movement onwards, from 1960s. So sufferers, though not as voiceless as they were in 1950, today they do have their voice. But the distribution of the voice, consolidating that voice into a common voice, is facilitated by the NGOs. Because state as an agency, capitalism as an agency, they work in tandem. Any anti-capitalist voices, any anti-government or anti-state voices at various levels, hierarchically at various levels, because government exists everywhere. The voices, if not protected, if the voice is not guaranteed, a voice is not guaranteed that it will be heard by someone, the voice would not come out. So there has to be someone who guarantees the person to voice out there, to tell the story. If a supportive agency to the sufferers, supportive agencies are not there for the sufferers to take care of their problems, the sufferers would not be able to. This is another kind of a problem. That is response from the agencies to the voice raised. How it will be? If the voice is consolidated, it will be difficult. But if its voice is single, it will be easily singled out. This is a strategy from the British, you all know. So for the consolidation of the voice, the NGOs works very efficiently. One of the important characters of the NGOs in this country or anywhere in the world is that most of the NGOs, while the leaders of the NGOs are from the upper sections of the society, we cannot say caste alone, only it limits to India, upper sections of the society. Rest of the administrative staff or execution staff and the staff that maintains the connection between the sufferers and the NGO are happen to be people who are from the sufferers. An educated person from a suffering community will become a connection between the NGO and the people. So such kind of people just coming into the colleges, universities, getting educated, they would find it an easy to go near to an NGO and tell their problems instead of going to a government office and tell to an officer. In the second place where his voice has to be reported, his or her voice is to be reported, or a complaint is to be reported, it might automatically get rejected. But that is not the case with the NGO. NGO by nature is supposed to hear the problem of a person who came with the problem. So it happens that the nature of NGOs in this country is that mostly these connecting channels between the NGOs, the working community, working staff that works among the people, or field staff if you wanted to say. Field staff is mainly drawn from the community, suffering communities, girls and boys and adults of those suffering communities. So they would work for them. So it will be easy for them to approach an agency which they believe, which means these young people who are the first generation educators, the first generation from the families into the college and universities, they would understand that by the time if they're approaching the NGO, they would understood the nature of the government and nature of the capitalism already. So therefore, they would not approach a government office or a corporation, even if the corporation is directly responsible for the damage that is being caused to the community or whatever, or the nature. So this suffering community, unfortunately, despite there is a supporting agency, because supporting agencies are existing, the degree of suffering is reduced. Otherwise, as I told you, the suffering would be 100%. They naturally lacks the ability of reducing the suffering on their own. If it is a suffering is caused by the natural disaster or a man-made disaster, in both cases, tsunami for example and the Bhopal gas tragedy for example, if you take both of these incidents, both of these, one is natural and another is man-made, reducing the degree of suffering or developing the strategies of protection from the danger depends upon the kind of influence you can make on the people who are capable of delivering that protection, or the required economic resources that you have. The amount of degree of sufferance can be reduced if you have enough economic resources, or you as an individual or part of a community, as a family, you should be able to influence an agency that is capable of providing the protection from the danger. If you are lacking these two things, your suffering will be 100%. So that's what I am saying. The last section of the society, in terms of environment, the protection and damage caused by the natural disasters as well as the man-made disasters. The suffering group actually, they are very vulnerable with less economic resources, less ability to influence the protection delivering agencies or protection providing agencies. So they are subjected to more suffering than the rest of the two. But the rest of the two, when you say rest of the two, actually the third category, the protectors of the nature, are actually, as I told you already, in alliance with, both the degree of the suffering for them would be lesser, but their field participation in protection of the vulnerable might also bring them into a situation where they are also volunteered to suffer, but not subjected to suffering by the nature of the accident or nature of the natural disaster, nature of the man-made disaster or nature of the natural disaster. They are not subjected to, they are also capable of, especially when you come to the protectors of the nature, it is combination, comes across the society. So therefore, you have the upper class and upper caste and all these kind of people in a group called protectors of the nature. So they volunteered to suffer if they decided to go into the field of protection, providing protection. Yet they do have the ability of protecting themselves if they decided to, like that of the first group. So their inability, the last group's inability to protect themselves makes them vulnerable, and eventually when their efforts fail to protect themselves or seek the protection, when they sought protection from the government, it is not giving enough. So they would eventually seek the path of democratic fights, democratic protests. Because the suffering group is by nature a mass. The suffering group or groups by nature is a mass. Only natural ability that it has, if at all positive it is, to put pressure on the agency that's supposed to provide the protection. So when it realizes, the last group realizes that the government is not providing the required protection, with the assistance, with the guidance of the protectors of the nature or the protectors of the people, you can say. When the natural disasters hit, you have to call them as protectors of the people. So on the guidance and the suggestions of the second group, the suffering mass turns into a protesting mass. So that is the only weapon they have in order to make the point that they are suffering. First of all, suffering is real, but the suffering is not seen by the agency that's supposed to see. Therefore, when it realizes that suffering is not being seen by the agency, then it takes to the course of mass democratic protest. Mass suffering transforms into mass protest. When the mass suffering from the lack of protection decided to protest, there is a certain amount of anger which cannot be avoided. That anger can get diverted into any way possible, unless and until you have the proper maintenance mechanism, anger management mechanism within the, among the leaders of the mass. It might turn into a serious problem, but not intended by the entire group as a mass. Entire group as a mass, it might not have intended to do so, but a mass might turn violent because it is angry. Yet, given the nature, guided by the agencies, especially the NGOs and intellectuals, activists, telling that in a democratic society, in a democratic governance system, anger would not bring you anything. It will only bring more suffering. So therefore, if at all we are fighting, we have to fight it in a democratic manner. So this guiding, now individuals will be there, guiding organizations will be there. Yet, even every person in the mass, convinced with the suggestions given by the guiding agencies, guiding individuals, mass always presents itself as a danger to the agencies in power. So what those agencies would do, mass need to be diluted. Even a mass demanding for justifiable wants. Their demands are justifiable, their demands are quite genuine, their demands are quite natural, yet mass is always a danger for the agencies in power. Therefore, as soon as the mass, for genuine reasons, turns itself into a protesting pressure group, the agencies in power would get into the action to either break the unity of the mass, or criminalize the mass. Criminalize the mass action into the name of law and order, whatever. So therefore, mass, despite being a group of suffering, things would not be easy for it to get protection or get concern from the agencies in power, get sympathy from agencies in power. Unfortunately, when the mass expresses its anger, it automatically, people in the power will read it as a anti-government, anti-establishment. So a genuine mass response, it turned out to be an anti-government action. And then it is open for criminalization. This is how environmental movements were treated. Madha Patkar was treated in such a way. Arundhati Roy, for expressing her opinion on the Supreme Court judgment in the NBA rule, she wrote a book or a pamphlet called The Greater Common Good. The Supreme Court judgment in allowing the dam of Sardar Sarovar in Gujarat, against which the Narmada Bachao Andolan movement was began. Supreme Court said finally in 2002 that for the greater good of the nation, dam cannot be stopped from building. So therefore, on that concept, she wrote a book. Initially, it was a pamphlet. Arundhati Roy wrote a book in the common greater good, where she was critical of the government narratives, court narratives, or justification of the dam. So that turned out to be a serious problem, a voice against the government. So she was jailed and fined. So like that, a voice, even if it is supportive, a voice that is supportive of the masses, even the masses demands are genuine, mass, very existence of the mass as a pressure group would immediately alert the state for state views as a challenge. State views such a response from the mass as a challenge. So therefore it would not like it. So it always try to dismantle the mass into pieces. We have seen many such kind of reactions to the mass protest in recent times in the state itself, that is in Tamil Nadu. So the give voice to the voiceless, the responsibility falls on the shoulders of the humanists, naturalists, environmentalists, rationalists, secularists. All these people coming across the societies falls on the people. Those are whom we calling activists, environmental activists. But the environmental activism today, or from the times of Madha Patkar, is not that, a job that would be appreciated by many, especially capitalism and the government. They would not appreciate the environmental activist. Yet, you have across the communities, you have environmental activists who have been shouldering the responsibility of providing the voice to the voiceless. But it will be wrong to say entire community which is suffering is voiceless. The environmental activists only work as a channel to take the voice to the place where it has to be heard. That's it. So the suffering community certainly acquired the ability of voicing their problems. As I told you, the civil society of India has dramatically changed from 1950s. Okay. It's not that it cannot understand what is science and technology, what is the impact of science and technology, what are the dangers of dam, what are the dangers of nuclear power plant, what are the dangers of exploration of the shale gas from the earth. All these things, because it is being written. Science today is being written. The impact of the science, the even working of the science, how it works, what are the impacts, what are the problems, what are the positivities of science, technology, is being written in the language that could be understood by any person who reads her and his own mother tongue. We have a Tamil science journalism today. So a Tamil journalist would write in Tamil about a science project that is going to be implemented in Tamil Nadu. So all people who can read Tamil would understand the implications of a science project, positivity or negativity of it. So therefore, one cannot argue that you are a common man, you cannot understand what the science is all about, technology is all about, development is all about. And you have TV news channels which tells the people that in an understandable language to the person, whoever is viewing a program, on a technological and scientific project that is going to be implemented in the country. Any person who views this program being aired in the language of the state that he or she could understand. So very easily understood. You need not have to understand the mathematical language of a science project or a technological project. You need not have a scientist come and explain, like APJ Abdul Kalam come to your door and explain, come to a meeting, explain what the problems of Kudunkulam problems or negativity, positivity of it. You need not have to have a science. A scientist, a science journalist is enough. If a scientist is coming, it is good.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sorry for the interruption, sir. Shall we have a few questions taking on so that we can break for
Yeah, sure.
3:30, sir.
Yeah. Please shoot whatever you have.
Sir, I have a question, sir. Like everything is based on hedonistic principle. If you consider the consider things happening, we judge it as good or bad by the maximum number of people who consider as happiness. Okay, so in that way, if we judge, the rest is left to be decided. Uh, so there are always category of people who oppose whatever programs are initiated, whether it is for the welfare or against. There is no bother. What type of judgment do we take in that aspect? We need development.
See,
We also need
yeah.
to consider environmental considerations. What do we decide?
Yeah, see,
See, when
point
there
is
is
that,
development, there is certainly some disturbance. Some sort of rearrangement has been made.
yeah, that I understand. The point is that, say, if there are 100 people, 70 people are happy, 20 people or 30 people are not happy, or 30 people can be sacrificed for the 70 people. So this sort of an argument actually do not work in a situation where the entire human society realizes that why my life has to be sacrificed a lamb for someone's development. Understand? If there is less development, everybody has to adjust with that less development. If there is more development, make sure that not a single person is suffering. Understand what I'm saying? So there will be a disturbance when you do a developmental project. Yes, but from 1950 onwards, if you are talking about the legislations of protecting the nature, there is a central government department called Environment. Today it is known as Forest, Environment and Forest, and today is also another word added called climate change. So if you believe that despite having a department which is capable of reducing the damage or taking the taking care of everybody's suffering into consideration and make sure that nobody suffers. You cannot prioritize your life because someone is incapable of protecting themselves. Understand what I'm saying? See, the development cannot be for somebody. The whole idea behind this NBA movement is that in and around the dam, people are left to be suffered, so that the power is going somewhere, supplied somewhere, and then agricultural water for agriculture supplied somewhere, but the people in and around the upper stream of the river above the reservoir are left to suffer. So which means we come to an argument, look, these 30,000 people can be made to suffer for 10 crores of people in Gujarat, Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh. So it doesn't matter. If you come to that conclusion in a stage where, so it was actually taken for granted, such kind of an argument is taken for granted when the entire society was not in a position, especially the suffering society, not in a position of understand that it is suffering, or it is suffering being caused by a development that is not connected to it. So the point is that the opposition to a development is coming from the community, which it believes that development is a suffering for me. So not even a single human life can be made to sacrifice by someone because someone is developing or the nation is developing. Not in now that argument itself is actually unfair. Even if the development is lesser, you make sure that there is not a single person who is suffering. That's the bottom line. If that is not the bottom line, Supreme Court would not be telling the world government has withdrawn the funds that are given to the Sardar Sarovar Dam in 1990. Had to withdraw the 10% of the dam cost from the government, saying that you have not met the rehabilitation plan that you have promised me. After that, which I gave loan to you. So the World Bank withdraw the money which has given to the state government and central government, saying that you promised a rehabilitation plan, but you have not produced anything. You have not stick to the plan. So therefore, I am withdrawing the money from the Sardar Sarovar Dam. So which means at the world level, despite there being a World Bank, It was under the pressure of realizing the reality or recognizing the reality that not a single person be made suffer for development of nation, even a nation. The degree of the development is not a matter. The suffering is a matter. I think from 1945 we're talking about human rights. If you say that 20 people can be sacrificed for some lakhs of people development, that I'm sorry to say you are deconsidering yourself as a human. And that's where the state-based arguments to justify the developmental projects, which actually are not in a position, governments are not in a position to guarantee that everybody is not a sufferer, or at least many are not sufferers. A single not being a sufferer is never guaranteed, but many are not being sufferers is never guaranteed. Even that is not guaranteed. So therefore, the Baba Amte writes that the outrightly central government and Gujarat government are lying to the people of Gujarat, saying that I have enough funds to build. And when he went through in his pamphlet, he wrote, "Oh my beloved, cry, oh beloved Narmada." He writes a pamphlet, Baba Amte writes a pamphlet, and he went through the documents and the records, of financial records of the Gujarat government, and finds that the Gujarat government did not have the money to compensate anybody. Therefore, at this point in time where every human life is important, no human life can be sacrificed for the development of the other. Prioritizing the development and expecting the sacrificing of the people. I'm not talking about life. Say, I'm not talking about killing, or I'm not talking about, but depriving the natural rights and right to live, right to have a livelihood, right to have a decent life compared to any other person. How can we be comfortable with such kind of justification of the development? The government is supposed to take care of. I do not really believe that there is no enough money. When money is concentrated in the few hands, so government is not capable of bringing that money where it is stacked or stored, and it wanted to give a sorry face to the people who are needed in that compensation, whatever the package that was pronounced by the central and state governments to the people who are affected or displaced and replaced by the displaced and to be rehabilitated by the Gujarat government at that point in time. So all of them are still waiting. How do you understand that? The Bhopal gas tragedy victims are still waiting to be paid compensation. How do you understand that? Like the incident is back in 1984. We do not talk about it because we are not the sufferers. So sufferers are unconnected to us. So if to feel that you connect yourself to the sufferer, even a single person, you need to be human first. Then only you'll be able to talk about the suffering. Suffering, unless until you put to the same suffering, we are actually on the when a person is actually swimming to survive, we are actually standing on the what you say on the higher place, and then trying to say he is not trying enough to survive himself, to save himself from the death. So such kind of let's say that development has to take place. Development has to take place, but at this point in time where the problems are pointed out that your development is not my dead body, such kind of an arguments cannot be dismissed easily. Now there is the entire, now when such kind of an argument comes, there is a serious problem in the very idea of the development that we are pursuing.
Sir,
Yes.
Doctor,
Sorry to interrupt. Can we take a break, tea break, Rao?
Yeah,
or
sure.
maybe 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm ready to.
You can re-energize yourself.
See what I'll do. I'll stop by 4:30. The last half an hour we can go for discussion.
Exactly. And also
I'll stop by
I believe that there is HRDC Dr. Sendilnathan is supposed to join, but then he has another meeting and he said he'll join by 5 o'clock. So maybe you can start discussion by 4:30 and end by 5 o'clock.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
yes, we can now break for tea.
Mohammed,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Shaktivel, can you,
Yes, sir.
yeah, maybe you can ask your question after tea break
No, sir, I have a question to you.
to me. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we have received an email for
Yes.
the project assignment title, right, sir? Where we have to
Mm.
add the names and all. Do we have the privilege of editing or modifying the topic
Yeah,
slightly?
sure. You can modify it. No problem.
That's what I want.
Yeah, that's all they see. It was all like randomly, just like that. It was all given. So you don't need to stick too much to it. You can just you can choose the title and then maybe you can modify the title. No problem. No issues.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, should we start?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so starting from the where I left, a friend asked the question, so we were talking about. I think nation, if wants certain amount of sacrifice from the people, the nation must try its best to say that, or give an impression that the sacrifices of their lives, livelihood, and then culture and decent standards of life are treated in the most best way the state can. If the state demands certain rights to be curtailed or transferred over to the state for the cause of greater good of the nation, people have been doing it, but then it is proved beyond no doubt that so far the state has not taken care of those people who force it to sacrifice. People will be volunteered to sacrifice their rights and their livelihood, land, when the state gives the impression that it is taking care of them properly. Why should I give my rights, land, livelihood, and fight for the survival? This is the question of this is the situation today we are in. Understand? So that's why the friend's question doesn't gel well. Reason is that so far the evidence shows to us from 1960s to that state has failed to provide the decent living standards, required rights, basic required rights for the decent living, after forced to sacrifice the land, rights, and culture, all that. So then there would be certain sort of an opposition to the kind of sacrifice the state wants and the way it responded to those people who have sacrificed or forced to sacrifice. So this problem remains from 19. So can you imagine from 1970 still people are waiting to get rehabilitated in the Sardar Sarovar Dam area? Among these 40 and including me, put yourself in a position where you're being denied of a basic life because you happen to be living in an area where the dam was being built. So therefore, to connect to the sufferer, we have to connect to their mind and heart to make an argument that yes, nation needs. But when nation needs sacrifice, when people made sacrifice, how the state and the civil society treated them. Leave all those people who are comfortable enough. Pay attention to those people who made sacrifice for the nation. They should be heroes. But that is not the case. They have been fighting decades together, fighting for meeting the basic rights of living standards. Well, if that is the case, can you make this argument like, it is not fair to sacrifice for the nation building? One must understand there is not a single designified human life here. Everybody is significant. Bhotias in the Chipko area, that is the Jharkhand Chamoli region, Bills and Gons in the Narmada River Valley area, and the fishing community in the Kudamkulam area, nobody, not a single person as a human are insignificant. From Prime Minister to a peon, everybody is significant. From a wanderer to the well-settled cinema actor, everybody is significant. So designifying the human because development is needed is unfair. So anyway, so coming back to the question, that unfortunately the amount of consciousness, required amount of consciousness is missing. Even the required amount of consciousness is not transforming into an actionable, environment saving endeavor. That is also not happening, especially the educated, at least from the educated. The consciousness should translate into an actionable, environment saving endeavor. That is also not happening. This is where the problem lies. It is not enough that we are teaching a paper of environmental, protection, environmental studies. Mohan Raj is doing. All that is fine. So, but the production of knowledge on the environment is fine. But how far of our consciousness, how much of our consciousness is transforming into an actionable, lessening the damage of the nature, or protecting the nature, reviving the nature, promoting the nature, extending that into the posterity. So that is very less, that is very unfair, especially from the educated community. That consciousness is actually not transformed into an actionable endeavors, actionable actions. Let me tell you that in a stage where we are living, how we are thinking, especially in connection with the environment. From 1750 to 1950, it is normal to use the nature, very efficiently use the nature. We celebrated the usage of the nature, glorified the usage of nature. Effective usage of the nature is the best quality of the human civilization. Yes, fine. Under the carpet, something was happening we did not recognize. Results of it began to be shown from seen, though they were there, but signals only we started seeing in 1950. Now, prior to 1950, usage of the environment for the human progress is normal. I don't see, though if you force me to agree that it is normal, yes, I do agree with it is normal because we have not realized. Everybody treating it as a normal, so let me be there also as a person who treats usage of the nature as a normal thing, if not justified. But from 1950s onwards, saving the nature, protecting the nature should also be normal because we already realized the problem. But that we are not treating it as normal. Saving the nature is something special, something rare. So what is normal earlier is supposed to be normal. If that was normal, using the nature was normal prior to 1950, saving the nature is also supposed to be normal from 1950s onwards, because the problem is already realized. But we are not normalizing it. We are seeing it as a special thing. We are seeing it as something rare. That rarity of saving the nature, protecting the nature, preserving the nature, reviving the nature, extending the nature, rarity is very dangerous. It has to be normalized. Everybody should start doing it. That's what the point is. It has to be a normal action. Nobody should treat you as a hero because you are doing it. As exploitation of the nature was not seen as abnormal thing, though it was a sort of, it was under the carpet, things were happening. We have not realized the problem. But at least after realizing, how are we treating the very idea of saving the nature? That is not happening, unfortunately. So, the degree of consciousness, unfortunately, is not getting transformed into appreciable action. So that action has the ability of, that actions and the activities, endeavors have the ability of extending the future for the future generations. Otherwise, you'll have to face girls like Greta Thunberg, who is saying, what right you have to destroy my future? I already initially told that she is not the only one who should be worrying. In fact, I must remind you, when the movement was started by her, most of them, all those who joined in the movement were schoolgirls. So that itself, where we as a middle-aged and old people are hypocritically not recognizing the problem and believing that it is only problem of the latter generations. Into my 40s, 30s, and 50s, I am fine. Another 30 years of my life, 40 years of my life is not going to be affected anyway. I'm not going to extinct by the next 40 years, so therefore I am happy. If it is a problem of my daughter and my granddaughter, let them worry. So this is the hypocrisy that we are living in. So the consciousness is there, though it is not required amount of consciousness that is there among us. Even that consciousness is not actually transforming into an appreciable action that would reduce the damage or revive the damaged nature. That's one of the important factors that we need to look into. So this disconnection between the consciousness and its translation into actionable activity need to be reduced, dramatically reduced. To be dramatically reduced. So that reduction only transforms into an activity of environment serving, protecting, reviving and promoting. Now we came to the conclusion, many of the NGOs are working actually in the area of reviving the eco-friendly traditions. Eco-friendly traditions. The eco-friendly traditions, especially in terms of production, methods of production, means of production, agriculture, industrial, whatever. In that area also they were trying. What are the pre-industrial means and methods of production in agriculture and industrial, which have the ability of revivability? You revive them so that whatever contribution they can make as a systems of production to reduce the usage of fossil fuels. So they would work. At least they address some of the supply issues, supply of material issues. So to that extent, NGOs are working to do research on the revivability of the pre-industrial agriculture and industrial methods of production, means of production. They were doing it. But that's, many of the methods are working also. Kudimaramattu in Tamil Nadu, what do you think it is? Kudimaramattu in Tamil Nadu, what do you think it is? It is a revival of the water saving mechanism, a traditional water saving mechanism that is forgotten for the sake of reservoirs, big dams, or whatever. Now it is understood that distribution of the water storage instead of centralization, decentralization of the water storage is the best method for the present day human civilization than that of the centralized water storage mechanism. Straight away, nobody is arguing that you demolish all the dams that are already built. What they are arguing is that you simultaneously work on the reviving of the pre-modern methods of water conservation, so that in course of time they might become a fantastic alternatives. Therefore, there is this effort by the NGOs looking into the possible revivability of alternatives, which found to be existed in harmony with the nature. To revive them. Their revival is not causing any problem. Their revival is making a contribution to a new model of economic development that is compulsory now, because we cannot go with the model of economic development that was there for 2 centuries. We find problem with the economic development. So therefore, a new model of economic development is being provided by the NGOs. It's not coming from the government. It is not coming from capitalism. Eco-friendly, less destructive, more comfortable, or more human-friendly economic development was coming from the NGOs. Sorry, I'll just. Hello. So I'm sorry, I got a call on landline. So that the NGOs are working on the revivability, possibility of reviving. So to work on that revival, what you have to do, you have to culturally, historically, systematically understand the structures of those pre-modern traditions of water reservation, water preservation, whatever. So to do that, you need to do a serious research. So they are doing a serious research into revival of the pre-modern methods of production. And they are proposing to the government that these are the alternatives. You have to work on them practically. Practicality, understanding the practical revivability. Theoretically trying to say this is possible and all that is different. Academically you are saying it is possible and all that. No, practically proving that it is revivable. So that sort of a research is being done by the NGOs. State is, of course, state is working in tandem with the NGOs. State seeks the help of the NGOs if the NGOs are believed to be the organizations which are falling into the line of the government. If that is not the case, there is a conflict between the NGO and the government. Therefore, that is also there. But however, there is a certain amount of cooperation between the government and NGOs, where if the line of the NGO is not conflicting with the government or capitalism, they are working in cooperation with the NGOs. So that way, there's huge amount of work carried out by the NGOs. Kudumarimatu in Tamil Nadu is such one example, reviving the ponds, water bodies. So the unconcerned attitudes of the exploiters of the nature is not, that's what I told in the very beginning when I'm talking about, it is very a serious problem that even till today, unless and until you are by the government, by the rule, by the legislation, you impose a fine, what we call corporate social responsibility and all that stuff. That is also being to the maximum extent misused and manipulated and all that stuff. Unless and until you impose a controlling mechanism on lessening the exploitation of the nature, among those exploiters, the natural realization, which is supposed to be natural at this point in time, that is not happening. So that is not happening on one side. It's very clever for 2.5 centuries. They have made the humans to be slaves, submissive slaves of a lifestyle. A submissive lifestyle. It becomes a sort of a mental slavery, which we find it difficult to come out of that lifestyle. So way of life, the nature of the human civilization from 1750s to 1950, the nature of human civilization, way of life, methods of production, religious and social traditions, are making it difficult for the present generations to realize the threat that caused it to the nature in the last 2.5 centuries. So means of production that are well established. We don't think that is an alternative is needed. Way of life is very comfortable. We don't think the dramatic rechanging of the life, refashioning of the life is needed. Certain religious social traditions, which are also causing the serious damage to the nature, we don't even consider to reform them. We believe that dumping some amount of leaves, water, banana trunk into the water is something that is not a big deal. But that was big deal when the water bodies are, were live and kicking. Today, where are the water bodies? By dumping all this cultural waste into a body called water body, which is not there at all. Yet we are not able to reform our culture. So way of life is becoming difficult to reform. Cultural reform is becoming too difficult. Methods of production is also we are not able to reform. So we are subject to a mental slavery that is very well developed by the capitalism. Unless until we come out of that, we find every possible way of lifestyle that would lessen the burden on the nature, or one or the other way promotes the revival of the nature, we need to think about it. Okay. So the methods of production need to be changed, if not dramatically, wherever possible it is. The lifestyle need to be changed, and culture and religion need to be reformed in order to accommodate. Once the amount of idols we immerse during the festivals is huge. Even if it is an annual activity, but have you ever counted how many idols we are immersing into the water body? Do we see it as a problem at all? So that we are not actually looking at. So this problems, unless and until you have realize that the actionable consciousness supposed to be transformed into actionable future, we are looking at a ghastly future of mass extinction, the declining the health and climate with the disruptive upheavals. We are looking at a ghastly future of mass extinction. We are not special in that event if it happens. Okay. So profiteering category, profiteering from the nature. I told you the exploiters of the nature, profiteers of the nature. That's what another word I'm using. So for the theory of utilitarianism, that is, according to Francis Bacon, science or knowledge is So Francis Bacon's idea was practically produce knowledge. Produce the knowledge on nature. Produce knowledge on the nature, so nature effectively can be used. Natural science, natural history started from 1660s onwards with the Francis Bacon's utilitarian theory of knowledge, has given rise to the effective usage of the nature, starting from industrial revolution or say organized usage of the soil for agriculture and other such kind of productions. But it was a time where resources were abundant. Nature was not yet touched as a concept of exploitation. Nature was not fully used at that point in time. 1750s. It's just a beginning. So we were under the impression was that nature has abandoned. And you must have seen the movie called Dictator. Dictator is by Charlie Chaplin, which is a sarcastic critique of Hitler. You should see that movie. So he makes an argument in 1950s and 1950s, I think, 50s and 40s that movie is made, or probably 60s. That he still uses the word nature is abundant, there is enough for everyone. So in the speech, it's a great speech where Charlie Chaplin gives in that movie. He uses that phrase called nature has abundant, there is enough for everyone. You cannot ill-treat, Gentile, Jew, this, that, so he says. So even by the time the movie was made, The Dictator in 1950s around, that kind of an argument, making that kind of argument in 1950, 1960 is unfair. That means there was no abundant natural resources by 1950. Abundance is gone. Inadequacy came in. Abundance is gone. Inadequacy set in. So the abundancy was taken for granted by the human society under the theory of utilization, utilitarian theory, where you have to produce the knowledge, to utilize the knowledge for the human progress. That is Francis Bacon. So using that, we have gone for a tireless usage of the nature, extensive usage of the nature. For such kind of a usage of the nature, human society's sanction was there. Human society's sanction was there. That sanction was coming from a society which did not understand what it means. Because I was referring to a society, civil society, which did not have enough information on what is the usage of the nature, what its side effects are going to be. Or who are the beneficiaries, who are the sufferers. Even if that information, if they had, they would have opposed it at that point in time. However, certain kind of associations and certain kind of individuals were opposing it. When the textile revolution came in English, in England, English people, some sections of English people have opposed it. They went and I'm sorry to forget the name of the group. I did not get the group. I'm not getting the group name. They went and mashed the power looms in England, which means by 1790s there is already an existing opinion that industrial revolution is not the only solution. They began to see the problems when the power looms, hand looms are getting transformed into power looms. They began to see that by the time. In India, you have Gandhi also arguing for something that is lesser, non-mechanical sort of thing. He was also arguing from 1920s onwards. It's not that alternative narratives or alternative views to the industrial revolution are there. Yet, the major society's sanction was there to effectively use the nature for the benefit of the human society. That is there, sanction was there, but that sanction was coming out of having the less sort of understanding what it is all about. So there has been the human society given the sanction to the utilitarian philosophy, that is, use the knowledge for progress of the human. Practical knowledge, knowledge on the plants, knowledge on the soil, knowledge on the liquids, knowledge on the water. Produce that knowledge, use that knowledge for the human progress. So this is what is utilitarian theory. Knowledge. So Francis Bacon believed that knowledge has power, science has power. You have to realize that power. Okay, so that way there is this realization that led to the Industrial Revolution, for which society had given the sanction, consciously or unconsciously. It is a conscious sanction, an unconscious sanction. Consciously would not have given because it did not know. Most of the general society did not know what this Industrial Revolution is all about. Production of things, massive production of material, factory, chimney as a symbol of progress, gear wheel as a symbol of progress. All these things are fine, but simultaneously something is happening we did not recognize. The human society did not recognize. So, yes, that sanction it has given, innocently, ignorantly given, damage is done. But now society, general society is saying, no, I am not giving that sanction. Today I am a different society. I am saying no to the uncontrolled exploitation of the nature. Unchallenged utilitarian, employing the knowledge for utilitarian purposes. I am challenging it. Therefore, hear my voice. So this is the society today. This is a civil society today that is saying no. But to that, the properties of the nature or the irresponsible users of the nature are responding low. They were using their strategies to counter the civil society. To counter the civil society. So what happened is that in the process of countering the civil society, the exploitations of nature would involve in generating the narratives. Like all that is pro-environmental, pro-ecological is anti-development. All that is pro-environment, pro-ecological is anti-development. That's very easy narrative to make. Second is that nature is too big enough to change, to be affected by the human activities. This is the second argument. Nature is too big, the planet is too big. So which means there is a strong belief in them, despite water bodies, most of the water bodies are dead. That is visible evidence for everyone to see. Despite we cannot drink an unbottled water or unpacked water, that is an evidence for everyone to see. We are in the denial mode of everything is fine. So nature is fine, it is not going to change forever it will be like that. So human actions have not had any impact. Human actions of production, extensive production, mass production, relentless production, uncontrolled production, permanent production had no impact whatsoever, so you need not have to worry. I dare all those people to go and drink the unbottled water, untreated water. Let them drink. they so agree with the argument that they're making, let them drink the water which is not coming from a bottle. Let them drink the open tap water. How many of those people who are making these arguments will be dare to drink a bottle of water from a tap or a river or a pond for that matter? You have to go to the Himalayas to drink the water. Even there also is all gone. Chipko movement, one of the reasons for the Chipko movement was that the extensive development activities taking place at this point in time, where the mainlanders were gone inside in the name of tourism, the entire hilly area was polluted with mainlanders' lifestyle. So therefore, in the Himalayas, you don't have the fresh water, drinkable water. You cannot trust the water and drink even in the Himalayas. However, do you know the Himalaya water? Himalaya water bottle is there. You know Himalayan water. So that company says it is as pure as Himalayan water. But in actuality, that Himalayan water, naturally available Himalayan water, is not pure. The man, he wanted to use the nature to say that it is pure. Nature is pure, supposed to be pure. But where is the pure nature? It's already got polluted. Purity in nature is gone long back. So he wanted to sell the water and say Himalaya is pure. No, it is not. Ganga is pure. It is not. So he still wanted to make people, as stupid that Himalayan water is pure, so you drink my water. He is not bringing that water from Himalayas in a way. He's just using the name and concept of Himalaya, purity and all that stuff. So he's trying to use that. So I am very happy that he's bringing the concept of natural purity. Here, nature is supposed to be pure. But then, did we let the nature to be pure? Certainly not. So therefore, the exploiters of the nature would come with the arguments that all that is eco-friendly is anti-environment. All that nature, climate changing is a hoax. Donald Trump came out of the Paris conference on climate change. He withdrawn from the climate change of USA, and he was laughing at Greta Thunberg, a teenage girl who's been making the impact throughout the world. And later, when the Joe Biden came as a president, they rejoined in the Paris Conference Treaty on the climate change. So this is this daily dolling is actually happening. But anyway, the point is that it depends upon that is very unfair arguments and uneducated arguments, illogical arguments. By most of those arguments against the nature change, like he personally calling, being a president of America, he was calling the climate change arguments as some humbug, hoax, it's a conspiracy, all these things he was saying. So I wonder why another president come and rejoin into the Paris conference. So what they do, the nature profiteers, they try to manipulate the narratives, try to build the narratives against the environmentalists, environmental movements, eco-friendly activities, to make the gates open for their activity, provide continuity for their activity. Look at today, the only natural spot, rainforest, that on this planet was untouched so far till last 5 years, 10 years, is rainforest, Amazon rainforest. Now China is doing soybean over there, producing soybean over there. The horrors of the Amazon tribal community, they are subjected by China and many of the and Brazil itself, is unimaginable. So if the Amazon is gone, there is no spot which is untouched by the human society in terms of exploitation. The Silent Valley movement in Palakkad from 1960 to 1989 was very successful. The Palakkad and Kerala civil society, NGOs worked hard. The greatest success of the movement to save the river and the river course and the environment. So they transformed the Silent Valley in Palakkad to be declared into a national park instead of submitting themselves to the designs of the state government by producing 4 units, of which each unit is producing 60 megawatts power. But such kind of success of the movements, people movements, is unfortunately very less because they are subjected to harsh treatment by the opponents, government and capitalism together. So the users of the nature, exploiters of the nature, would always try to treat the pro-environmentalists, pro-ecologists, people movements, people themselves, who are some of the environmentalists comes from the main society, but you have the leaders from the sufferers also. All of them are subjected to harsh treatment. The leader of the Amazon tribe was killed. Because they are opposing the entry of the mainlanders into the Amazon forest. So like that, they would stop the radical transformation of the society into a society which realizes the problems that is being caused to the nature. For that, they will invest on the promotional programs, convincing programs in connection with the state. So it does not allow the reorientation of the human society into a new society that would re-establish the relationship it once had, a harmonious relationship once it had with the nature. If that happens, there will be less nature available for exploitation. If that happens, companies has to reduce their production capacity. So I'll stop here.
Sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah. Sir, what about the learning strategies of NGOs to tackle government in opposing projects that are likely to produce some consequences? See, NGOs are fighting since their origin, or for some cause they started that NGO, and they have been fighting for protection of environment. What type of learning have they got in succeeding their protests or whatever objections they show towards development projects that could ruin environmental intactness, such like the Silent Valley movement? Are there any instances where NGOs have successfully done, or any successful strategies they have followed? Anything like this? Any case history?
Yeah, so that's what you yourself have cited, the Silent Valley. So to that extent, Silent Valley movement success, Chipko movement mostly run by the environmentalists. The NGOs participation was less in the Chipko movement. Chipko movement also forced the government to declare the ban on the tree felling for almost 10 years. So that was a success. And it has forced the central government to create a cabinet department, a cabinet level department called Environment, and that was created by Indira Gandhi. So Chipko movement was obviously a successful movement. So at that point in time, NGOs were not there. Mostly it's run by the environmentalists. Then if you come to the NBA, that is Narmada Bachao Andolan, it is a combination of NGOs. The success of the movement, Narmada Bachao Andolan, is actually 50-50 in a sense, that it has made the government realize that it has failed to do the duty of rehabilitating the people affected by the dam. When it comes to the strategy, Madha Patkar internationalized the Narmada Bachao Andolan. Internationalization. The process of internationalization, she took on her shoulders. She went around to Japan, to America, to UK, to Brazil, and she has got the help from all these countries, especially NGOs in those countries. Friends of Earth, for example, from Japan. So they have extended the cooperation to internationalization of the Narmada Bachao Andolan to put pressure on the World Bank. So that way she has developed the strategies of trying to provide sort of pressure that is needed for the movement. And she also very successfully has made it into a national movement instead of limiting it to a region. She was simultaneously doing at Jantar Mantar, and also she has staff for the environmentalists who are taking care of the movement in the affected area, that is the on the river banks of the 3 states, among the 3 states. So you have the working environmental activists and NGOs working among the people simultaneously. She is also making into a national movement. In fact, while the Chipko movement is the first movement, though it was started as a movement for the resources, but it turned out to be a movement of saving the nature by hugging the tree. So it's a movement to lessen the speed of the using the nature. Okay, so that way it was successful. Chipko movement was successful in making the government realize, constituting committees, understanding the floods in 1970, which resulted out of the continuous felling of the trees from 1950s. Then there was, of course, Himalayan tsunami, what we called in 2012, in the same area where we have seen in 2021. So in the same area, 3 floods have occurred. All of them are closely connected with the deforestation of the Himalayan region, that the Chamoli region. So therefore, they made the government to realize, and NGOs, with the help of NGOs in the tribal community in Niyamgari in Orissa, where the South Korean steel company POSCO was made to go away from the area by their consistent protest and efforts, and it was given. In fact, one of the important discussion I should have done, but I did not have time, where the concept of public debate, the concept of ecological impact assessment or environmental impact assessment, that came into the legislation in 2013 by reforming, by the modification of the law that was introduced by the government of British government in 1894 to the Land Acquisition Act. So to that, the UPA government made reforms in 2013. In that, they made it compulsory that the environmental impact assessment must be there for any developmental project. And the public debate, that is, you go to the public before you take any decision on any environmental project or any scientific project, any technological project. So the public, what we call public debate or public consultations. So public consultations and the ecological impact assessment or environmental impact assessment have become a compulsory procedure for now, which means it is a result out of the environmental movements from 1960s. So most of the environmental movements were ran by the NGOs. There is no doubt. Of course, some of them are single run. NBA is a combination of NGOs led by Madha Patkar.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question. You were also pointing out about the government attitude. towards the environmental issues in the present context as well in the past decades too. Whenever there is a developmental projects, the government is looking at the majority's benefit, and the marginalized people are getting victimized in that process. Is it similar to that of the utilitarian theory, the Jeremy Bentham, who proposed the utilitarian one, rather than being a welfare state, they are looking at the major benefits of the majoritarianism.
So actually the utilitarian theory expects some sort of a sacrifice, or as a state, in the Jeremy Bentham's utilitarian theory, the eminent domain. State declares itself as an eminent domain. So I am an eminent domain. I am the owner of everything in the four walls of nation. So by doing that, it declares the ownership over all the resources, that whenever the resources are needed by the government for development of the nation, one has to give. Whether
sorry to interfere, sir. In this context, there is another doctrine called doctrine of public trust. Public trust doctrine is completely against that the eminent domain, so wherein the government is having the ownership. Public trust doctrine says government is not the owner; it's merely a custodian.
That's true. That's what. See, the public trust theory is not, the way the public domain, eminent domain is, proposed or popularized. The public trust theory, you might be knowing, that is not popularized even. You and me may be knowing. How many people are knowing that there is a public trust theory, and that has to be popularized as because that contributes to the society's consciousness. It transforms the civil society into a owner. It gives that kind of a knowledge. You are not the owner, I am the owner. So if such kind of a knowledge penetrates into the people, and what would happen? There is the degree of rejection of the state would be much more higher compared to that is existing today. So it is intentional. The not promotion of the public trust theory is an intentional. As a knowledge, it is a required knowledge to every citizen. Not promoting that is an intention. So when that is not happening, that is an intention of the government. So therefore, the rejection would be much lesser, and automatically the public domain gets justified. The government as a public domain gets justified, and then the people have to face the harsher treatment from the state. Certainly I agree with you.
Dr. Rao. Let us take some more questions if people are interested.
Sure. I have no problem.
Okay.
Let them ask.
So any questions from the participants? Somebody raise the hand in between. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Hello, sir. Sir, you are referring to the June 19, January 2019 Legislation Act on the ban of plastic covers and bags. I'm talking with reference to Chennai. Immediately you find Corporation of Chennai officers, they started imposing huge fine of 500 to 5,000 rupees on shops, depending on their size. And we did not get plastic covers for quite some time. And there was a change among the people. But now, again, you find everything has been forgotten. From street vendors to the big shops, they start giving covers again. Whom should we blame? The people or the government?
So I think one thing that has happened, you have to look at the ban and the impact of the ban at various levels. Earlier, prior to 2019, mostly it was plastic given in all the shops. But today, despite the ban is being not respected by everybody, there is a visible change among the shop owners. They have introduced a different kind of material. Many of them voluntarily, or probably they thought it is better. If you look at shops, some of them have introduced a material that is probably, though it is not totally not impacting the nature, but they have brought out some kind of a material which is not as plastic, as dangerous as plastic. So that one positive thing has happened out of the ban that they have tried. Second is that there is some sort of behavioral change that is visible among the people voluntarily. That behavioral change is visible. That is, but it is quite minimal, in a sense. Like if you are going for a shopping, say you already know you started from the home. Is it a big trouble for you to take a bag with you? Okay, so is it a big cultural change? Is it a revolutionary change? It's a small change. But why are we not sticking? Why are not we trying that change? How many of us, when we are starting from the home, how many of us going with a bag? Okay, so this attitudinal change should have been dramatic, respecting the ban. But actually, I've seen very terribly disappointed in this university itself, where the students and the faculty, I openly challenge my colleagues in this university. Faculty also have not made any efforts to avoid avoid bringing plastic into the campus. Faculty itself themselves could not present themselves as an exemplary people, so that the students would have followed them. So there is this, that's what I'm saying. I'm disappointed with an educated community, which could have been an exemplary society community to the rest to follow, that they failed to avoid the single-use plastic. That is the condition. So though there is a behavioral change, that is quite minimal. As 1%, 5%, that is not enough. That's not enough. Millions of science shows that there are plastic particles everywhere in the seawater. So why are we ignoring, why are we denying the reality? That is the point. As what my concern is, botheration is.
Yes,
Yeah.
Rao, I think there is like there should be a kind of paradigm shift in the attitude, which is, you know, like if you see from the past, it is not like for political mileage they take the environment in their hand initially, overall.
Yeah.
But in reality, uh, even though there is widespread concern that is raised from various sectors, including the corporate, I'm talking about the top corporate. On one hand, they say that they will in terms of corporate social responsibility or whatever. But still, your neighboring state like Orissa, still it is the indigenous people, or even the large group of population is still underprivileged. Like the operations are there, industrial operations, and so many. So I remember when I visited Orissa for another project that is like there were movement, an NGO called I don't remember the name, but it all happened in 1997, 98 at that time. So 3 companies, Utkal Alumina and another 2 companies. So they have denuded the whole. Otherwise also they were out of ignorance. People like in the shifting agriculture, they had already destroyed the forest, and in one of their houses, they showed us a kind of skeleton, like front head. Then, with a lot of difficulty, we found out that that is a animal called hog deer. Hog deer is like the population has declined, and almost it is becoming an endangered and extinct. It's now distributed very rarely here and there. So, one immediate victim of this sort of, as you said, the profiteers or exploiters. At least human, we have some voice. At least some people. some, but then the whole ecosystem, if you take, there are so many species like hog deer, which yes, already extinct, and nobody realizes that these are all essential. If we keep on killing all these guys, then ultimately we have to go for mass extinction. That no one realizes.
Morgan Freeman, Hollywood actor. Morgan Freeman, you just type Hollywood. Actually, he's Afro-American actor. So he's been spending all his money to develop.
I think there is an Rao. I think there is an audio interruption.
Sir, maybe his internet is not working, I think.
Okay, no problem. So let us be in the meet. Okay, Rao, you are back?
Yeah. So therefore, only individual efforts are organizational. Of course, you and we are all doing. But I think it is time for the mass realization of each and every individual to the possible, especially educated community.
Yes, like see, people like Stephen Hawking, they're already told that okay, this is it's all going to be very, very soon in that direction. So he realized. Many have realized.
Absolutely.
Yes. And but then anyway, as you said, see, it is all the technology, and it is all the consumption, and where there is a change. As you said, just like that, we cannot eliminate plastic from our life because
it's not that you have to make effort to lessen it.
Innovation.
That's what the point is. Lessen it.
A lot more innovation has to come, and that too from the young generation, and we have to guide them properly, and maybe but then I don't think the entire the government sector are, if you take the whole world into one, only excepting very few countries, and no one is bothered about it.
That's right. That's true.
And the sacrifice which already the countries like India, we have already sacrificed for the climate change.
No, if you're India, will India be ever able to build the wall against the sea? But Americans are doing it. This is where I am talking about the vulnerability and the manipulative power and the power of investing against the nature. As of now, you have America has, and it's building the walls against the sea. How much money would be needed for India to do that? So we are going for mangrove sort of thing.
We say we don't know. See, like particularly the wrong spending of money is happening now, widespread.
That's true.
Not spent in a correct manner, or either in correct the correct infrastructure. Not in the correct infrastructure. Infrastructure and basic amenities. Instead, something else is coming up. So all these things are, we don't know exactly where we are going, and by the time we realize nothing, you can't repair or undo the things. So So I think any more questions from the participants?
Sir, quick one in continuation to the 2019 January plastic single-use plastic ban. Usage ban has been imposed by the government, but they haven't thought of banning the production.
Yeah.
The source itself should have been touched upon rather than voting around the bush, going behind the public and the small vendors.
Yeah, I'm not.
In this
Yeah,
regard, I wish to get you.
absolutely, absolutely. I agree with you. See, that's a general popular argument, especially that is coming from the common man. See that there's this in one social media video, this one Tamilian is asking, everything is coming in the plastic. When I carry it in the carrier's bag, that's a problem. You go and post it anywhere, I'll take care of it. I'll go to the court, you call me wherever I'll come. So there's one Tamilian making this argument. It's a very valid argument. So however, if you look at the Plastic Association that immediately reacted to the ban, so the state government's ban was half-hearted. One has to say that the state government, as if it is predicted that there will be a response from the producers of the plastic. So therefore, they immediately gave a statement, and it is published in all newspapers. So they should have touched upon the sources, but you have to take that. It is what I believe is that the government wanted to show to the public that it had an obligation, it served that obligation by bringing a legislation. How it responds to that legislation, it wanted to check. It checked. And then what it did, the blame has gone back to the people as well as the producers. So therefore, it is just did, you cannot tell me that I'm not doing anything. I did something, it did not work. So what the hell you want me to do? That's the kind of an impression the state government wanted to give. As usual, I completely agree with you. It is not full-heartedly did it. It is only a half-hearted measure, and it is not even serious also. Some here and there, some fines are imposed, and it has not gone everywhere and every shop and every corner. It has not conducted any convincing program seriously among the public. It would have done it, and it did not do it. There were school children in Tamil Nadu from town. I think the biscuit wrappers they sent back to the Britannia company. So there was this news in the public domain for some time. So at least from that kind of students, very young students, say from a school, say they have done it. So how many of us? Say let me tell you, it is not easy. For example, Mohan has raised a question: where is it completely possible to avoid the plastic? Say for example, mixture. Mixture we buy a mixture earlier it used to be sold in the shops by big glass jars. Now the shops you see that has gone, plastic is gone into each and everything. They're selling you in 1 kg, half kg plastic. So when I go to, why I'm pointing it is that though it is difficult, you have to make an attempt to do it. So when I go to the shop and take the newspapers and then ask them to pack it in the newspaper and give me, otherwise I'm not buying. So at this point in time, if I do that, you might, for many people, it might seem as some kind of a crazy sort of a thing. Even that shop person would give a surprising look at me. Why did you come with a newspaper? And it is also time-taking business. So all these things are, so when I do for a shopping, I made a agreement with a small shop owner. Look, if you give me all the sort of whatever the provisions I am buying, all the pulses and all that masala, if you have them in loose, if you give them in packed paper, and I'll buy from you, I'll not buy from the what is that shopping mall or whatever. So though initially he find it difficult, but he is actually packing all the things for me in the newspaper. So I think there has to be some sort of an effort, you have to do it. Otherwise, there is no point in all 40 of us listening to a sort of a thing. So let us see what will happen. As Mohan, as Stephen Hawking believed and realized that is the truth, we are going to have a tough time. I consider myself as a criminal to bring 2 children into this world. I don't know what is going to happen to them. One is in 8 years, another is 5 years. So I am a criminal. I am giving them, probably sending them into a gas chamber.
No, the issue is the consumptive lifestyle.
Yeah.
That is. I think the urban, it's becoming more and more nowadays,
Yeah, that's what.
and it is all vested interest. Like Amazon has become top 10 richest, and Amazon is doing very well in India. You know, the if you buy a small, probably the product inside is so small, but the packaging, you know, the packaging industry is like the entire packaging industry is like now they are the most destructive forces now. The packaging industry.
I know.
So
Packaging, that's
it's all
what.
like, and the Swiggy and all these things sort of lifestyle. If you buy a ordinary 2 idli, then you will get at least the plastic waste for for at least 500 years it will take to degrade. So that is all there now.
Can we read it in a different manner? It shows the failure of the scientific community to come up with a solution or an alternative to the single-use plastic, which could be more affordable.
No, I think there are alternatives. There are alternatives already. If you go to any shop today, there is a visible alternative. Though it is completely 100% guaranteed that it is not damaged, there are already innovative products that are coming. But compared to the plastic, it is a bit costly, so they would not. Now, as I told you, already informed, there are many shops. The super shopping malls have gone for some sort of a material which is not plastic at all. So that realization is there, but it has to be, government has to see, it has to make go for an extra mile to popularize these things, and then it is not doing. It is under the control of the companies. That is that is the public truth, whether you realize or not.
Stories. Yes, that is the real story. The government cannot do it.
That's it. Yeah.
So that is why in the Western they say that the green transition, the whole society, the state, everybody has to go for a green transition, not the present kind of government. So that is very few such concept itself is not taken up by the Indian government or anywhere else in the here. No political party or nobody has that concept itself.
These industrial societies already, if you look at an American going to a shop, he or she carrying the things in a paper bag that you have already seen. They don't carry anymore. So there is a certain amount of realization at the civil society that plastic is not good for the society anymore. But that economy is capable of affording a sort of an alternative. But here, the rest of the economies have not gone to the extent of affording the alternative material. So that is taking time.
Wow, the issue is not just carrying one cloth bag and going to the supermarket and buying things. Whatever you buy in the supermarket, everything is wrapped in some or other sort of plastic. So just by carrying one bag, we cannot reduce the plastic menace. It's all like the product chain itself has got so much of plastic in it.
Product chain.
How to eliminate the plastic from the product chain? Just by carrying one, if I carry one cloth bag, that is not going to eliminate that is not going to solve the issue.
Yeah, it's not. See, the point is that at least in a time where though that cannot solve the problem, at least one plastic bag is being avoided. That is number one. That is number one. Second is that I've been at individual level, I've been trying whatever is loosely available, I am buying. I'm trying to make that I'll buy those things. I stopped buying the vermicelli. No, I don't make any upma because upma rava is not available in loose. So I don't make chapati and other things. Dosa I'm making it because I'm not buying anything that is wrapped and packed. I'm making those efforts. So it is not easy, but let me tell you. So how will I buy biscuit packet? I don't buy biscuit packet. I'm not eating biscuits anymore. So that difficult life to run.
we should avoid rice items, no, sir, for our health. We should take other than rice items.
That's what. See, environmentally, Mohan, we should talk about. There is a civil society is considered. It has rechanged its life also. Today, if you talk about, many people are eating ragi made items. Many people are eating thinai made items. Many people are eating jwara made items. So it's not that civil society is not changing, but that change is actually health conscious, came out of the health consciousness. But environmental consciousness is not connected to that.
Then
So
one small issue also available, sir. If you are wrapping the vegetables other than plastic and keeping in the fridge, it will be lose its freshness and greenness, and it stink within 1 or 2 days. What to do, sir? So we should avoid by keeping this in fridge, and we have to buy daily vegetables, I think. Then only we can avoid the plastics.
I understand the difficulty. I understand. Whatever you can, you do. That's it. What I'm saying. As Mohan suggested, as me suggesting, complete disconnection from the plastic may not be possible. So in a place where I could have avoided
in fact, Rao, in fact, plastic is helping in several aspects to some extent. How you know? Because otherwise you need to cut so many forests. If you need to replace with another material, say for example, the next alternative is aluminum foil or the iron or the steel or even the jute fiber or even or anything else. Suddenly, if you want to switch over immediately, it is like to be even if you take hospital or wherever, all the materials which they use, in fact, it is cheaper, the plastic. But then only thing is, we don't have a proper technology to dispose it safely. That is the issue, actually. So
open dumping is a serious problem.
We need to have a disposal technology where it can be converted into another product or whatever it is. That is the issue. So maybe I think
Seas are full of plastic, so that's a problem here.
That's the problem, microplastics. So now I think it's already 5 o'clock. I don't think director is joining today.
Sir, I have
sorry, you're there.
Ever since Saktivel and other participants were discussing, I've been here, sir.
Oh, sorry, sir. I didn't notice it.
No, I didn't want to disturb the flow of the discussion.
Okay.
So, how are you, Rao sir, Srinivasa Rao sir?
Thank you, sir.
I logged in when you were at the beginning of the session also. Right? I'm sure you had a good interaction with our participants as usual.
Yeah,
that's fine. Okay. So, beloved coordinator of the program and distinguished participants, a very pleasant
maybe Rao can leave, I think, or should we?
Yes, sir. Rao, sir. Someone can do the vote of thanks for Srinivasa Rao, sir. So I have some information to share with the participants, sir. Whoever's due it is for vote of thanks, please do that.
Sir, hello. Sir, it's audible?
Yes, madam. Lakshmi madam, you are audible.
Okay, sir. Good evening, everyone. I am Dr. A. Lakshmi, Assistant Professor of Physics, Government Arts College, Trichy 22. On behalf of the participants, I am here to present a vote of thanks for today's lecture. First and foremost, I would like to thank MIT who gave an opportunity to attending this online refresher course, and I would like to thank the resource person, Dr. Y. Srinivasa Rao, Associate Professor, Department of History, Boston University, Trichy 24. Today, he gave deep insights into the role of NGOs and people management in environment protection, and also revealed some important issues like concerns of environment, responsibilities of human society to maintain eco-friendly environment, and the moments of NGOs. These are really useful work. And all are inspired by your talks, is sparkling words. And once again, I would like to thank Dr. Y. Srinivasa Rao for taking out time from his busy schedule and enlightening with the knowledge of NGOs and other. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And I would like to thank our coordinator, Dr. Mohan Raj sir, who really showed holistic support and worked hard to arrange this section successfully. Thank you, sir. And I record my hearty thanks to Dr. S. Senthilvelan sir, Director, UGC, HRDC of Bardhasan University, 2024. Please organize this online refresher course successfully. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And finally, I thank all the participants here for paying our attention and learning. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, One Natal Gathering. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, I leave then.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Dr. Rao. You can leave the
Okay.
meeting.
Sir, Senthilvelan sir, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So, good evening, every one of you, my dear participants. So
Good evening, sir.
I'm just very happy to
Good evening,
have
sir.
a very good
Good evening,
interaction
sir.
with you. Good evening, every one of you. And I'm very happy to see that you're all very actively participating and enthusiastically participating. And as I understand from the resource persons who handled the sessions for you the past 2-3 days, all of them are extremely happy with the level of participation and the level of enthusiasm you evince as participants. And your coordinator is also extremely happy with the excellent cooperation you're all rendering for the smooth conduct of the program. So I'm very happy to interact with you at this juncture. You see, this is just 2 things we would like to share with you. One is with regard to the assignment. Let me tell you, the assignment topics, as already we mentioned, it is not project proposal writing, because project proposal writing is not well suited in the context of a multidisciplinary research. That is why we have done away with that. For instance, there are participants from Bharatanatyam department, there are participants from Tamil language and literature, of course in the EVS, both batches together, someone from English, and it will be really tough for a person from a different field to write a research proposal linking it with some environmental issues and concerns. That is why when we inquired in some other HRDs also for multidisciplinary, they went for an assignment. The same thing we are also going here. And this assignment is going to be 2 questions, only 2 questions. For each one, you are going to give a 2,000 worded essay, right? It is going to be 2,000 word limit essays. 2 essay type questions, which we are we're going to, I don't know whether my technical team has shared that already in the WhatsApp, right? It will, or else it will come to you in a few minutes now. And you see, one question is about whatever discussion you have been having about, the role of citizen movement, right, in protecting the environment, sustaining its points and all, okay? And that will be for about 15 marks, it will be evaluated. And you see the second 2,000 word essay type question will be a little different in the sense that, it will be, each one of you will have to write a different answer. All of you cannot write the same, because it is about your institution. And the question is very simple: discuss the curricular, co-curricular and extracurricular activities that you will organize in your campus, your institution, for promoting environmental awareness, environmental attitude, environmental education, this and that. And you see here, individually you have to think in terms of what will work in your institution and write. And there is nothing like handwritten this and that. I was told that some HRDCs insist upon manuscripts and other things, but it is nothing like questioning your academic integrity and all. We fully believe you that you will write well. So you go ahead writing it in a word processor. Straight away you can do it in MS Word and convert that into a PDF file and send it to the mail ID that we have already added in that assignment question itself. So it is there at hrdcrcsevs@bdu.ac.in. So that mail ID, you just send it before the deadline. We have given some deadline also for that. And one important thing is, it will go for an external evaluation. Some environment professor, right, will evaluate it. And when we send the file to him, along with that, we will also send the plagiarism report. Okay, so we will subject it to our anti-plagiarism software, and but the percentage, whatever that it reflects, along with that, it will be shared with the expert for evaluation, and that will be evaluated for 25 marks. Okay, and this is with regard to the assignment. And with regard to the seminar presentations, some of you might have already seen, we have shared in our through your email a Google Doc link, a link for Google Docs. Okay, a Google Doc is an editable document. Any one of you can go there and edit. Okay, so that is what we have done, and it will be something like this. Okay, the doc, when you open up the link, it it will be something like this. You will get it. Excuse me. Of course, this is for the teacher education. I hope all of you see my screen. Can you?
Yes, sir.
So like this, you know, the list of topics for seminar presentation, and you see with the list of about 40 topics we have listed. Your coordinator has given 40 topics. Okay, and it is there in the list, and you see all the 40 topics, and select the particular one you want to do the presentation. Okay, for instance, if I choose to do something on Mahatma Gandhi's thoughts on education, then what I have to do is I have to enter my name here. Okay, in the opposite column I have to enter my name. Okay, that's all, and there is no need to save the file after entering the name manually, as all changes will be auto saved since it is a cloud based facility. Okay? So don't bother about that. Okay, so this is what is important, and kindly go read all the 40 topics. Dhanasekaran sir, can you mute your mic please?
Okay.
Yeah, right. Kindly go to the list, have a look at all the list, and you know the list is a little comprehensive list on different aspects of environment, like emission or global warming, many other things we have touched upon. And for a non-environmental science person, anybody who is not coming from EVS department, I'm sure you have to read a little bit from the web. You have to go to certain websites, search for some authentic content, read, reflect upon it, and then only you will be in a position to prepare for your seminar presentation. So kindly do that, because it's all a learning exercise. And essentially, I think we have already told you that it is PowerPoint presentation. Not only PowerPoint presentation, we also want you to make some powerful points. That is important, not PowerPoint presentation alone. Okay, but PowerPoint presentation is a must, and about 5 to 6 slides at the maximum, because you see it is 7 minutes. The presentation is for 7 to 7.5 minutes only. So for each slide you are going to speak for about 1 minute or 1.5 minutes. It is going to be just 5 slides. Okay, then you know you have a title slide and a thank you slide. So 7 slides are enough for doing the seminar presentation. However, it is left to you to decide, but the time limit will be 7 minutes. That is something very important. And you see, we have put already in the WhatsApp group the dates to remember, the schedule, the deadlines for submission of assignments, this and that. Your schedule for seminar presentation has already been shared. So we have identified some, I think 18 people will do in a session, and in another 2.5 hour session, 19 people will do. So each of you are going to do for about 7 minutes, 7.5 minutes, and there will be an expert who will live sit through in the session. Like we are all there in the system, one external expert will be there to evaluate your performance online. So, one day before the presentation day, you have to send your PPT to us, and we will send all these 19 PPTs to the particular expert who is going to evaluate you 19 people on that particular session. So he or she will have a look at the PPTs you have prepared, and because the evaluation is based on 2 criteria. One is content. 12.5 marks will be given for content, and another 12.5 marks will be for presentation. Okay, so that's how it will go. And just before, one day before the seminar presentation also, we will tell you how to do it in a professional way without losing the time, without wasting others' time also. One simple thing is the coordinator will take care of that, and you can also organize among yourselves, kind of a self-organizing yourself, right? For instance, imagine if the first person to present, right, is Ananta Lakshmi, okay, and the second person is Dhanashekhar, okay, and both Ananta Lakshmi and Dhanashekhar have to be ready, right, at 10:10, okay, or 10:15 when the introduction is done and handed over to the expert. Why? If for some reason Ananta Lakshmi has some difficulty in sharing her PPT, we cannot keep on waiting now, because the entire thing is 7.5 minutes. So we will wait for 1 minute and then we will call the next person, Dhanashekhar. Okay, like that, at a particular point, 2 people will be ready, and then we will give the opportunity to Ananta Lakshmi when she sets right the problem. Or even I will tell you, you can organize among yourselves. If somebody who is very good at technologies, who has a high bandwidth internet connectivity at your disposal, you can even collect all the PPTs, right, and present for all your batchmates. Okay, that also is possible. And in case some of you have some difficulty, sir, I have some difficulty in sharing the files. Maybe on that day, I may be participating with a mobile phone, so I may have a difficulty. Then you share it with somebody in your batch, and ensure that the other person is supporting you with the presentation properly. Okay. So one important thing is, I hope you understand that we have no time to waste on that time, on that particular day. We have to keep the ball rolling. Only then we will complete all the presentations. The last 10-15 minutes, the expert will give you some feedback, some reflections about how you performed, okay, or what are the areas you could improve upon. So this is very important. Okay. So these are 2 things I wanted to share with you. I'm not sure because I was in another meeting whether my technical team has already shared the assignment questions in the WhatsApp. If it is not there, they will do it quickly. You can just have a look at the same in your WhatsApp group, right? Okay. So that is one thing. So kindly indicate your choice of the topic for seminar presentation in the Google Doc that has been shared already with you. Okay. So thank you all of you. I hope you will enjoy your Sunday, right? Okay. Yes, because enough work.
Sir, one question, please.
Enough work we have given, so you can enjoy the Sunday. Yes, madam. Yeah.
Sir, one topic is for one person, or one topic can be shared by more than one person?
No. The idea behind
one
giving
topic
you
for only one person.
Yeah. Kindly mute your mic, madam. I'll tell you. You see, the idea behind identifying 40 topics where there are 37 participants is that every one of you will choose only one topic. And in fact, we have given 3 or more topics also, just to give you a variety. And here also, I would like to tell you, imagine if by the time Dr. Anita goes to the Google Doc and she is interested in doing on a particular topic, but she sees already Padma Priya has entered her name there. Okay, because first anybody who goes first, you will have the first choice of selection. Okay, and what you can do is, maybe Dr. Anita and Padma Priya can discuss among yourselves and see if they can exchange the topics. And you should see that you are intimating the coordinator, right? Again, so already the list has been shared. It is only 5:15 now. Maybe you can take about 2 more hours before 7 o'clock. It will be good if you can all complete the selection. Okay, so we will be in a position to generate the list, and because when we assign some 19 students to an expert, we share the mark statement with the name and the selected topic, and the evening the PPT also will go to the expert. So the evaluator will sit thorough with a fair idea of what the people are going to do in the session. Okay, so that is the way it has been planned, right? Okay, so thank you all of you, right? So have a pleasant Saturday evening. Enjoy the Sunday, right? We will meet on Monday morning as usual, 10 to 10:10. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mohan sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mohan sir. Mohan sir. Can I talk to you, Mohan sir? Coordinator sir. Hello, coordinator sir.
Mohan sir has left the.
I think he left.
Maybe you can call him.
Okay.
Do you have his number?
It is there in the WhatsApp group, no? Number is
Yes. In WhatsApp.
coordinator number is there in WhatsApp group, I think.
Yes, yes, it's in the WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
Thank you.